welcome back. Episode 3 already. How quick this has gone. This is amazing. I am once again going back through the videos, checking a couple of things. And I'm saying again. I gotta stop it, guys. I gotta stop it. Okay, so this episode is, as I promised, it's going to be about designing, and this is where I really like to shine. Maybe it's not going to look that good when you first see it or whatever like that, but working in the place that I've worked and it's slowly been introduced, everything that I'm able to do using design features in this app is actually quite shocking to a lot of people. It's actually got me a lot of praise, I suppose, on the design, and I will ask you guys, anyone that does watch this video in the future, to if you can come up with some really cool ways of doing certain designs in Power Apps, which it is quite hard. Let me know. Let me know, because I am pushing this to the absolute limits to try and get like some really nice designing apps and just move away from the basic templates that Power Apps, once again saying that Power Apps has. Nothing wrong with the templates, they are very good. Again, my gosh, let's push through that and let's get to that ceiling as quickly as we can. Right, so I'm going to leave this here. I will eventually delete it. I am just going to create a new screen. Boom, blank screen. So when we come to designing apps, one of the first things is buttons. Buttons. Love buttons. Trying to create interesting buttons. Hold on a second. My bad. Trying to create some interesting buttons here. So let's start. One of my new favorite ways of buttons is containers. Containers have really upped my design game, and have really made a change to a lot of things. I wish I could now go back on all my previous apps and change the way that I do my buttons. So let me show you what it was before compared to now. This is a very small design thing. So what did I used to do? One of the things I wanted to do with my buttons was to have a shadow. So I'm just going to zoom in here, right? Just like this. I like to have shadows on my buttons, but they're not defaulted with shadows, right? So when you press a button, you see it's like this dark color. That's preset. So if you go to your properties drop down and go fill, this is what it's automatically set as. You can change that color down here, but you need to delete this first. So if you're having like, oh, why can't I change the color? It's a new update. They automatically get set to this. You need to delete this function or this code, and then you need to place the color there. Now, each button and a lot of other assets have these borders. Now, they can be annoying when it comes to design. Me personally, I take them off, like 0. So I just go 0 for the border. The problem is, and that people forget, is when you click on a button, two things. One, you've still got a on hover, and then you've got a pressed border. So see how I've pressed it? And it's got this border. So you need to remove that. So first things first, to get rid of that border, you go to your advanced focused borders. So you find that by just searching for it, focus border. So it says focus border thickness. We're going to change that to not 400. We're going to change it to 0. So now when we click on it, we don't get any ugly big border. Only thing we have to worry about now is the on hover color. So there's two ways. You can just come down to your properties and on hover color. It's set to, you're going to see this reoccurring a lot, that you're going to have to keep changing. No way around it at the moment. So what you can do is you can just delete this, right? And then you can just change it to a lighter red, right? That's one way to do it. But why do it that way when you can actually code something in? So there's a function called color fade. You give it a color, you give it a percentage, and it will reduce or increase the fade on that color. So you can just go self.fill and then do your comma, and this is where you can give it a percentage. So you can give it 20%. That's the magic number for me. And now when I hover over it, it's a very light. And if I want it to do darker instead, I do a minus. And you can see it goes darker. So what I would normally do, right, if this is press here, and just so you know as well, just so what that means is if I change this color to green, it'll automatically change it so it's faded. So that just means I never have to worry about the on hover. The only other thing I have to worry about is the on press, and I normally just code that to be the self.fill. So self is the asset that you're currently got selected, .fill. So now when I press it, it looks like it's kind of flashing. It's right. No, don't be professionally for anyone that's going to be asking. So I did Armageddon. Apologies. What I was doing this right. Shadows. So this is how I used to do shadows before. I literally Control C, Control V, like so, and then I do on the keyboard. You can actually move your assets around with your arrow keys. I'd literally go one to the right, one down below, right click, center back, delete this, change this to black, give it some transparency. So I should explain this. These are your theme colors. These are all standard. You can't change these right now, or you can. Or the only other thing you can do is just go fill and do a custom RGBA color. But you can play with the transparency, which is your alpha, right? Red, green, blue, alpha. So I changed that to 20%, and there you go. We got a little bit of a shadow. This is how I used to do my buttons with shadows, right? Now, what I'd have to do is, if I want to move it, I've got to highlight the whole thing, or I've got to put it into a group, which I can right click and go group, and now it's a group. But then when I go to move it, it's like this, right? That's how I used to do it. An easier and cooler way is using containers. So containers have a property called drop shadow, which is set from none all the way to extra bold. And that is a way more professional shadow. There is another way of doing shadows with a HTML asset. So there's one here called HTML text. You can do it that way, but you can't do it to, like, it's just really annoying with buttons and stuff like that. It's video for another day, right? So what you can do is you can set that to regular. You can then add a button into here. So let's just say I grab this button here, paste this into here, move it to the top left corner, or change the X and Y axis to 0, 0. You go to your properties, you go to width, you set the width to parent.width, width, and then you set the height to the same, parent.height, right? So the parent is the container, right? This is that whole parent-child relationship that these assets have with one another. So the parent of this particular button is the container. The parent of the container is the actual app screen itself. That's how it works. You can see that here. See? So parent, child, grandchild, right? So now, if I resize this container to 200 by 100, or maybe even 80, no, we'll go 40, and we'll change this to 120. Right? Now you can see here, it's very, very hard to tell, but to the trained eye you can see it. Just here there's a little bit of a white gap. That's just the border radius. So the border radius for the button is set at 10, right? We want it to kind of mimic the container, whatever we set the container to. So you press into the button. Now you got to remember, you got a container and you got a button. So when you press the button, it's actually selecting the button right here. We can see in the tree view. Very important to make sure you're checking that. Remove the border radius, so make it a 0. So now you see there's no white gaps, but it's not as curvy as this button here. But you can see it's got a pretty good shadow, right? So in order to select the container, I normally just drag over it, or you can click the container here, right? Moving the container can be a bit difficult. You want to click on one of the sides here. If you click in the middle, it's going to select the button, right? You want to press on the sides, press and hold, wait a second or two, and then you can move it no problems, right? So selecting the container, I'm going to change the radius border to 10. and then I'm going to set it to semi-bold. So now you can see very, very small detail, right? It's got its own shadow that goes just around the whole border rather than just around the bottom right. If you want to do it this way, you can, no problem. No problem at all doing it this way. I prefer to do it this way, right? So with little design changes like that, we can start to make a lot of interesting things. So first thing we're going to make is we're going to make a how would I say this? We're going to make just some tiles that are actually buttons that will navigate us to different screens, right? So best way that I like to do it is a gallery. So we'll do a blank horizontal gallery. We are not selecting a data source. We're going to make our own data source in this item right here. For now, I'm just going to change the width to 800 and this to 300, right? So now the way that galleries work is they work off arrays. So you can actually build your own array in Power Apps as well, using the square brackets for open and close. Now anything in here will be an array. So to do your array, you need to wrap it in quotes like this. So now I can do 1, and then I do comma, 2, comma, and 3. So now I have 3 rows of data in this table array, right? Very simple. I'm going to change this in a second. I just want to show you that there's 3 items. The way that I'll show you that there's 3 items, so the way that galleries work is you have your main template. Anything you do in here will mimic any other item that's going to be on here. As I explained in the first or second episode, I can't remember. I think it's the first one when we started playing with galleries. Galleries are just going to show you the items from the SharePoint list, or in this particular case, it's going to show this table array in item form. So there's going to be 3 there that you can't see at the moment. I just want to explain this concept is you've got your main template. Whatever you do in this main template is going to be the exact same on the other ones, but for that particular item. So for an example, if I do a rectangle, a rectangle will appear in all of them. And as you can see, there's 3, right? Now, if I put a label in there, if I just hard code the label to say hi, it's all going to say hi, right? But if I go to this item dot value, it's going to show the value of this particular item. Now, with that, you can do a bunch of if statements to make a couple of cool little things happen. For this particular circumstance, we're going to actually just play around with the sizing of the templates first to make sure that they all fit. So one of the design things I like to do is I chuck containers straight in, and I set the containers width and height to that template size, so that when I make changes to the gallery itself, it's automatically going to resize the container. So I'm going to go width for the container. As you can see here, I've selected the container inside of the gallery, and I'm going to set its properties to parent dot template width, because I want the width of the template. If I go width, it's going to do the actual size of the gallery, which is like 600 or whatever it was. I just want the template size, which we haven't really set at the moment. There's an automatic code on there that we're going to change. So I'll go template.width. I'm going to move this so it's the x and y axis are 0. And then I go to height, and I change this to parent dot template height. Right, so now anytime I make changes to this, it's automatically going to resize the template. Right? So I'm going to set this back to 800 and set this back to 200. So as you can see here, it's getting cut off, like there's 2 and there's 1 there. So now I want to adjust the template size. So there's a property for that, template size. Remove this straight away. I don't get why that sits permanent 1 straight away. Remove that. What you're going to do is you're going to go parent dot width. Now you've got 2 options, right? You could either just hard code it to be, I know there's going to be 3 tiles, it's going to do parent dot width divided by 3, or you can do like a count of all the items that are there. I'm just going to go for this particular one, I'm going to go divided by 3, right? So what am I seeing here? Oh, sorry, that was my bad. Not parent.width, we want self.width, because parent is going based off the app itself. So self.width divided by 3, that's my mistake. So as you can see here, there's still a scroll bar, and I can scroll to the left. So we just need to adjust it a little bit, and I normally remove anywhere between 5 to 10 pixels to get that sweet spot. That sweet spot will be as soon as that scroll bar goes away, which is at 7. Oh, sorry, just adjusting myself. So as you can see here, there's no scroll bar, and I am seeing 3 items. So now if I were to change this to 1,000, these cards or these containers are going to adjust to that. So let's go big ones like this, just for now, right? Oop. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my items. Now I'm going to show you, as I said, it's all about layering your skills. So I'm going to show you how I first started off, and then later down the track, once we get into something else, I'll show you where I'm kind of sitting at now with how I would do these. So how I started off, which anyone can start off, is I would go, I'd go home, then let's just go screen 1, oh no, we can't do that, let's go edit, and we'll go view, right, just for now, right. I'll then have a quick look, okay, I want to change my border radius to be 10, and I want some shadow there, right, so I've got some shadow, so they look like they're popping out, which is really nice. So now I'm going to look at putting some items into here. So first, let's start with a label, so that we know what it is this particular item is. So we'll go this item.value, right, like so. So now you kind of want to remember that you want to try and keep it dynamic, so that if I were to change the size of this right now to 200, right, it's not actually, like, the label's just stuck down here somewhere, right? That's because the X and Y axes aren't dynamic. So I want to kind of look at how I can make this dynamic. First things first is I want to stretch this out to be the width of this container. So this one's a lot easier. We just go parent.width, right? We want to move this text to be in the middle. So you could do that with text alignment. So you've got left, middle, right, and justify. We'll just go middle. Now we want to set the y-axis. That one's not too bad. So we pretty much go parent, and this is all just maths, right? We go parent.height divided by 10, right? That's going to get us right there. What we can then do is times it by a certain amount until it gets to a good level that we like. So it looks like maybe about 6.5 is going to be like a nice decent level. It's like kind of down the bottom, but not all the way down the bottom, right? So I'm quite happy with that. Let's update the size to be a little bit bigger, right? We've got to remember that people like big buttons. So now we want to just, like, we're looking at designing stuff, right? So let's do a icon. So you got all these different icons to play with. I'm just going to adjust this. So first off, let's bring this into the middle. So you can bring this into the middle of a parent by just going parent.width divided by 2 minus self.width divided by 2. Anyone that I've taught knows how much I like this code. It's just to bring it into the middle, so I didn't have to worry about finicking, playing it around. And it also means that because it's not hard-coded a specific x-axis, as I increase and decrease the size, that's going to change. So then I do the same for the y, but I use parent.height instead. Right, so that's right in the middle of the screen, right? Now, I don't really want it right there, I want it a little bit further up. So I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the labels. I'm going to divide it by 10, and then times by 5. Right, that's there. Let's go 3. So 3 is about a good height for me. I quite like that, right? But now they're all showing the same icon, which isn't what I want. So what I want to pick is 3 random icons, which there's heaps of them, right? So when you select any icon, you put any icon there, you got 2 ways. You got one up here, you can look at the icons here, a little bit of filters there, or you can just do it down here. I just normally just do it here, and I can find which ones I like. Now I'm just going to do document stuff. So you have to do a little bit of coding, and that's where previous episode we learnt the if statements. So if we go to the property drop down, we go icon. You can see here it's literally you type in icon dot and then you can pick a property. So what we're going to do is we're going to do an if statement. This item dot value equals home. We want to do icon dot home, right? So now if we close this off right now, only one's going to show. It's going to be right there, and it's only going to show for the home value. So then we can start to add them in for the other one. So we'll go this item dot value equals edit, and you just do icon dot edit, right? And then we could do one for this item dot value equals view, and then we do icon dot view. Right, so as you can see, just from having one unique value, we can start to do all these cool little changes that come through, right? Now in terms of shape design, you can add a circle now, right? You can set it to be the same width and height as this. So as you can see, this is coded to a size, so we need to make sure that we're fixing that. So if we go parent dot width divided by 10 times 5, that's 160. I'm just looking over at the right here, so looking over the right here I can kind of see the sizing, so maybe about 2. So 2 is about a good height for us, right? So I want to make sure that the height is the same as the width. So I just go height, I go parent dot height. Oops, sorry, width. Sorry, self dot width, that's my bad. So I'm saying whatever the width value of this is, I want it to be the height, just makes it even. You want your icon sizing to be the same. You don't want them to be different. So now that I've got this, I can see that when I bring my circle over here, because I did my circle after it, we've got some layering issues. So for anyone that's familiar with PowerPoint, objects can be in front or behind stuff, right? You've got two ways of doing it. You can right click in the tree view, right? And you can go reorder, send to back, send backwards, and bring forward, bring to front, right? Or I just like to right click, reorder, send to back. So now that's at the back. So now we can see that this is now aligned to this middle. So we've hard coded that though, right? And also the sizing is going to be the same. So what we want to do is we want to try and figure out, using a couple of little bit of math equations, how to get this in the middle so it's like this. So first off, we can look at, okay, well, what's the y-axis for this? And let's see what happens if we use the same y-axis. Right? So it's a little bit under that, right? We can see that it's a little bit under, but it's also a different size. So if we set this to the same size, height, self.height, oops, self.width, sorry, my bad. Okay, we can see that it's about the same height. It is the exact same y-axis, 117 by 117. So now let's move it into the middle. Parent.width divided by 2 minus self.width. Okay, so what we can see there is that it is the same x-axis and y-axis, but we can see that the icons are kind of just out on the outside. We don't really like that. So what we want to do is we've got two choices. We can make the circle a bit bigger, but then we got to like play around with the x and y axis a little bit. Your other option is to add some padding to the icon. So if we add padding, is just like pushing in a blank space on any of the directions. So if we do 5 padding on all sides, you can see that it's the house is on the inside, but then the pencil isn't. So we'll just do another. We'll do 8 in total. And now that looks a lot better. It's obviously not a really good size, so I want to look at sizing it up a bit. So I'm going to go 3 instead. And then I'll do the same for the circle. Go 3, and then we know that's going to be the same. Like it's going to be equal to the same spot. Right? But now we can see that we need to add a little bit more padding on the icons, so we'll go 10. Right? Now that fits in fine. So we've got a dark background and a dark foreground for the colors. So I'm just going to change the colors of the icons to be white. and as you can see, they kind of pop out a little bit more, right? And then finally, I just want to kind of add like there's just nothing going on at the top and bottom, so I want to kind of look at what I can do at the top and bottom. And this is where buttons are one of my favorite design things to use. So if I just move the button up to the top right and I set the parameters, the width to be parent.width. So you can see here I quite like this type of feature up the top here, but what I don't like is that this curvature down here. So all I need to do is get rid of the border radius, change that to 0. Now when I hover over this, you can see it kind of flashes. I don't want that, so I want to change it to view mode, and that stops it. So it can't be selected, which means there's no on hover fill. And then I just want to get rid of button, right? You can also do it with a rectangle. I just like to use buttons. It's just my thing. And then I just want to make it a little bit bigger. So if you're ever going to change the sizing, you should always try and make it dynamic. You don't have to. It's just a good habit to get into to try and make things dynamic. And you do that by referencing a parent shape. So I'm just going to go parent divided by 10 times 1 times 1.5 just to get a little bit bigger. That's too big for me, so let's go 1.25. Alright, and I quite like that. So right now we've got these 3 buttons, and there's a couple other things we could do now. So normally when people are playing with your app, right, they expect to come here and click anywhere here and be able to do what it needs to do. Now, one of the things I really don't like, and I try and drill into anyone that I am teaching, is for a user experience, when I'm playing around with an app, I'm clicking everything. So here I can click this here and it kind of flashes, right? And then I can highlight this, and I don't want to do that. The only way, there are multiple ways to stop that. The best way I find is just to put a blank transparent button over across the whole thing, right? So once you've gone and done all your design, you just create a button, you set the width to the parent.default, and you set the height to the parent.default. That covers the whole thing. Get rid of button, and then we're just going to get rid of the borders, get rid of the focus border. Focus border is just here. And then we're going to change the color to transparent. So you've got 2 ways. The quickest way is just press white, then press the transparent. The other way you could do it is type in color.transparent. Right? Either way works fine. Just going white then transparent is quicker for me. Right? I also need to do it for the pressed color, and then also for the hover color. Right? The hover color you can do a little bit different. What you can do, which I do sometimes, is I do a gray and then I transparent it to 20%. So now when I mouse over, it looks like, oh, this is a selection. One final thing that you can do for a gallery is transition. So in the gallery properties itself, there is transition. And you can do push, which kind of increases the size as you hover over it. But with shadows, as you can see down the bottom here, kind of cuts it off. And then you've got push, that might be the better one that I do use more. It just pushes it in instead. So pick what you want when it comes to that. Dealer's choice. Now, the last part of this design is the actual coding part to it. Right, so I've got my screen here. I just want to name this screen to dev home. Right, screen for now. I know I've got home here. I'm not going to use this one. I'm going to use the edit. I'm going to say that this form variable testing is my edit screen. So what I could do is, since this is a whole button now, it can have its own on-select properties. So it's a simple if statement. If this item.value equals edit, what do I want it to do? There's a function called navigate. Right? Open brackets. Now navigate allows you to transition between different screens. So I want to transition from home screen to this forms, ifs, and variable testing. And it's as easy as that. Close the brackets, and then you got to make sure you close your if as well. So now if I press home, nothing happens. If I press view, nothing happens. If I press edit, it's going to transition me to this screen. Now if I want to go back to that screen, I'm just going to copy and paste this. You've got 2 choices. One choice is you could do back. Now what that will do is that will send you back to the previous screen you came from. So that is fine in smaller apps that don't have multiple screens that don't go from one to another. If it's just a transition, you go up to this screen and then you go back down, that's fine. So if I press back, it's got to go back here. What I like to do though is I just set it to navigate. If I know that this button needs to take me back to the home screen, I'm just going to go navigate, home screen, like so. That's just peace of mind. I've just had too many issues with it in the past. That's why I do that. And that's what a lot of the things I'm going to be teaching is I'm kind of sidestepping all these issues that I have had by showing you the ways that I find best to use it. So one final thing that you can do with screens, like navigating, is screen transitions. So in the navigate function, if you do a comma after your screen, you actually get all these different transitions that you can do that are pre-built into it. My favorite ones are normally cover when I'm going to a screen and then uncover when I'm going back to a screen. So now when I hit cover, it's going to cover the screen. And then if I come to this back button and put the uncover right, it's going to uncover. So it looks like it's kind of sliding on and sliding off. So that's pre-built into the application, into Power Apps itself. So just as a wrap up, a couple of things that we have learned today is just about the different ways that we can design things. There is one way to do it, but there's also another way to do it. And from here on, we're just going to start to build upon what we've learned in these past 3 episodes. With just this basic stuff, you can do a lot. I will still keep tacking on little bits and pieces. What will be in the next episode is us actually looking at how I go about planning out a screen, doing a little bit of research. I'll provide some sites that I do like to use. I've kind of got like an idea of how I want the app to look, and it just take a little bit of time of us designing a couple of different assets to it. So between now and then, I will be I won't delete these screens. I'll just leave them here so I can always reference them back later. I'll just add a new screen, and we'll spend some time. The episodes are being I'm still at like about the half an hour mark. I do want to kind of reduce it a little bit as much as I can. So it might be me just jumping over a couple of things and then explaining afterwards. Next episode, as I said, we'll start with actually designing, and I'll try and speed design a couple of different things for a screen that I see would be very helpful, and then we'll go from there. So if you are enjoying it, please let me know. If there's anything you do want me to show you, I could do a little side episode specifically on that. Don't mind so far. Do encourage you to watch from the start, as each episode is layering your skills with Power Apps. Thank you so much. Have a good night.